Hey everyone, so today we are going to look at reviewing for that radicals test. So we're just going over everything that you should know and remember from radicals, but maybe need a quick refresh on. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just the order in which that we simplify radicals. So there's 4 steps for that. And the first thing you want to notice about your radical is that we want to be able to factor the radicand. And when we factor, we said that we want one factor to be a perfect square, and we need the other one to be a small number, and we're hoping it's prime. So we want a perfect square and a small number when we factor. The next thing we have to do is once we've picked those factors, we want to write them both, both of them in a radical, or as a square root. So we're writing both factors in the radical. The third thing we do is we take the square root of our perfect square. That's why we picked it, because we want to take the square root of any number that we can. Now, when we do that, we still want to leave that small number in the radical, because we can't do anything else with it, so it's just going to stay there. It's kind of like our remainder. It's whatever we have left over. And the final step is we want to make sure that we are either multiplying by any coefficient, any number that's out in front of our radical sign, or combining like terms. So that means we're either adding or subtracting that from any other radical that has the same radicand in that square root sign. So let's do a couple of these examples here. The first thing we want to look at is 8 square root of 112. So now we would want to first, like we said, we know 112 is not a perfect square, so we would want to list the factors. So the factors of that would be 1 and 112, 2 and 56, 3 doesn't work, so we don't want 3. But we know 4 is going to work because 2 did, so we have 28. 5 isn't going to work because 112 is not a number that ends in a 0 or a 5. And we know 6 isn't going to work because we said 3 doesn't work, so that can't work. But then we have 7, and 7 is special. It goes with 16. Now, we could keep listing more factors, but we said we want a perfect square, and I have a few listed here. We have 4, and we have 16. Now, 4 is a perfect square, but I don't like 28 because it has more factors. It's a larger number. However, 16 is a perfect square, and I do like its partner because its partner is 7. 7 is not only a small number, but it's also prime. Its only factors are 1 and itself. So we would write this next step as 8 times the square root of 16 times the square root of 7. We're writing both our factors in a radical sign. Now, our next step says that we take the square root of 16, so we get 8 times 4, because that's the square root of 16, and then the square root of 7. Now, 8 times 4, since they're not in the square root sign anymore, we can multiply those two together and get 32 square root of 7. And that is our final answer. We know it is because we already said 7 can't be simplified any farther. Now, for the next one here, we've got -4 times the square root of 160 minus 2 times the square root of 90. So let's take a look here. We want to first simplify these because I know I can't combine two different things. 2 different radicals cannot be combined. So let's do 160 first. So we have 1 and 160. We want to list the factors. 2 and 80. 4 and 40. 5 And we could keep going, keep going. I know that the factor that's going to work, though, is 16 and 10. That would be 32. Now, I know that because 16 and 10 gives me 160. In other words, 160 with one less zero is a perfect square. And I know 10 is going to be okay because 10 is a very small number. It doesn't have a lot of factors. So we like that set. Now, let's take a look at 90. What happens when we try and factor 90? Well, the factors are 1 and 90, 2 and 45, 3 and 30, 4 doesn't work, 5 and 18, 6 and 15, 7 doesn't work, 8 doesn't work, but then we have 9 and 10. Now, we said before 10's a good number to use, so we're going to use 10, and we like 9 because 9 is a perfect square. So we have both of our factor sets. Now, let's use those back in our expression here. We had -4 times the square root of, we said 16 and 10, so square root of 16, square root of 10, and then -2 times the square root of 9 and the square root of 10. Now, I know that 16 has a square root. That's why we picked it. The square root of 16 is 4. So we have -4 times 4, square root 10, minus 2. And we picked 9 because that's a perfect square. Its square root is 3. And then square root of 10. So now 4 times 4, and it's a negative. So -16, square root of 10. Minus, we have 2 times 3, which is 6, square root of 10. Now, since these have the same square root, we said that we can combine those two things. Now, we don't change the square root. We're just saying how many total square root of 10s I have. So if I have -16 and I take 6 more away, that's -22 square roots of 10. Now, we have a few more problems to talk about. I'm going to upload these, though, in another video just so that you can have some extra time to practice those first couple of skills we looked at if you need more time.